journalist Ilir Ikonomi that is here with us today. Had some other obligations, so it was not possible, especially in this culture, managing the time is not an easy issue. So we would like to welcome Ilir for being with us today. And as you know, recently Ilir is coming with a new publication. It's about independence and Ismail Cemali. And also he did another one, a very good one, Ilir that I just read it in 3 days. I was really looking to go home and read the book. It was well written. So I'm sure that you had a chance to read the last book or the previous one. And you might maybe the journalist from the Voice of America, another work that you are doing. So let's welcome him and let's have a free talk together. Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Elena, for your great introduction. And I need a little time to get used to the English language because I've been here for 2 weeks now, and I haven't been speaking English for 2 weeks. Can you imagine that? It's a long, long time. So I'll try to speak English to you. Thank you very much. In fact, the fact that you read my first book, Ilir, was the reason why we're meeting today, because she wanted me to come to this university. I'm so happy to be with you. I write for the readers. I don't write for myself, like some people like to do. I noticed that some people like to write for themselves. They just to tell stories and to show through their books how much I know about the subject, and not to write about you, the reader, so that you can personally connect with the subject. But I like to write for the readers, and mostly for the young readers, younger generation. When I left for America in 2002, maybe in 1992, which was 20 years ago, maybe you weren't even born at that time. It's more difficult for you to catch up with the history of Albania than for me at that time. So I noticed that many young people don't care about history in this age where we're living in. Anyway, I came here with a new book, which is called Independence, Pavarësia, Udhtimi I paharuar I Ismail Cemalit, The Unforgettable Journey of Ismail Kemal. And I have the book with me to show it to you. This is the book. This is about 300 pages long. And this describes the journey of Ismail Kemal from Istanbul on November the 2nd, 1912, until when he arrived in Vlora in the night of the 25th of November. And this book depicts all this journey and the ups and downs and all the meetings that he had with the diplomats in some foreign capitals like Bucharest, Vienna, Budapest, Trieste, and so this was written in such a way that I think it's pleasant to read for everybody, and especially for the young people. It's not history in the classic meaning of that word. So it's not a depiction of the facts, but it's a depiction of characters, of details, and of course all of this has been based on real facts. And I mostly explored some very important archives. The most importantly, the Austro-Hungarian archive, which is a wealth of information about Ismail Kemal, because the Austria and Hungary was a country at that time which was very interested in having an independent Albania on the shores of the Adriatic Sea. They didn't want the creation of a pan-Slavic state. They didn't want Serbia to take an Albanian port, most notably Durrës, or Durazzo as they called it at that time. And so they were very interested in having Albania as an independent state, creating an independent state in Albania, and the Italians too, to some extent. But the Austria-Hungary was the most concerned country. Of course, they were proceeding from their own interests. They were interested in, not because of their love for the Albanians. We must distinguish here. It's because of the historical conditions and some interest, intrinsic interest that they had at that time. And so the Austria-Hungary archive is a very good archive, a wealth of information, as I said. And I didn't even go to Vienna to search in the archive, into the archive. And I learned this a little later, after I had begun the research, that you could order the archive online. You could send an email to the archive and order a research on the subject that you want. And I told them that my topic, the research of my research, is Ismail Kemal Bey. So they started to research. And they found out that there were like hundreds of pages of documents, and these were totally unknown to me. And they said, this is how much we have about Ismail Kemal. Do you want this or not? I said, yes, I do. And so they told me this is how much it costs. And it was like 500 euros to purchase this archive, which is very convenient, isn't it? I mean, this is amazing today with all the new technologies. And you have people who physically go to Vienna or to other countries to do research, and they spend money on travel, on hotels and stuff, and they stay there. So it's very expensive. But this way is so the archives are becoming more and more democratic in this day and age. And so they sent to me this all the pages that they could find about Ismail Kemal. The Austria-Hungary, the minister was saying about Ismail Kemal and other people, the councils in Durazzo, in Durrës, and in Vlora. All this information was very useful, and I found new things that I didn't imagine I could ever find. And so I also researched the old newspapers. The newspapers are a wealth of information as well. And these newspapers can be found online today. You go on the internet and you can find a lot of stuff there. For example, I was aware, even before starting this, that there is a website, a French website called gallica.com, which is a wonderful website, and you can go there and find all the old French newspapers, Le Monde and Le Figaro, all this, Le Temps. And the beauty of this was that some of these newspapers were pro-Serb and others were pro-Albanian. For example, Le Journal de Débat was very pro-Albanian, while Le Temps was very pro-Serb. So you could find stuff there that what those pro-Serb newspapers were saying against Albania, against the formation of a new independent state, and those who supported the independence of Albania. And I confronted these materials. I found some very good interviews, for example, with Prime Minister of Serbia, Mr. Pasic, who was against the formation, the creation of an independent state of Albania. And the main thesis was that the Albanians cannot form an independent country, a national government. They cannot. It's impossible. And why was it impossible? Because the Albanians have three religions. The Albanians have two very distinct dialects, the Geg and Tosk, and all these things. And this point of view that the Serbs were spreading around in Europe was so pervasive that almost everybody was convinced that the Albanians cannot have a state, an independent state. Mostly because of these three religions. How can you put together people that have different religions and create a new state. Impossible. So anyway, so these were the French newspapers. And the Austrian newspapers were also very interesting. These were in German, and luckily I speak a little German, not very well, but I can understand. I can read fluently and can understand. There is a website where you can find almost all the Austrian newspapers, starting from 1860s up to 1930s, maybe later. So this was wonderful as well. The only problem here is that they use those Gothic characters, not easy to read, the German newspapers. The Austrian newspapers were interesting because some of them were pro-government. So basically the Austria and Hungary government who was interested in having an independent Albanian state, they used the newspapers as the mouthpiece, as the spokesperson, as a mouthpiece to express their own point of view. So you can find, for example, in these newspapers, things that I have discovered, that the Austria-Hungary at one point in November of 1912 said openly, that in an editorial, that the Albanians shouldn't fight for autonomy anymore. They should fight for independence. So they quite openly said what the Albanians should do. Very important articles. And also, in these newspapers, I was able to find some very important interviews of Ismail Kemal. For example, all the historians in this country believe that the first time when Ismail Kemal mentioned the word independence was in Trieste in November the 19th, when he left for Albania. But I found that he did that much earlier, on November the 8th. In an interview with an Austrian newspaper called Die Neue Freie Presse. And this was a very important interview that I found. I found, for example, that Ismail Kemal had a vision for Albania. He said the future independent Albania should comprise all this vilayet of Kosovo, Chamria, all these places, and the capital should be Elbasan. And Vlora is also an important city, he said, but Elbasan should be like Washington D.C., and Vlora should be like New York. This was what his vision was at that time. Of course, it turned out differently because the war was very intense those days, and things were changing very rapidly and were progressing very rapidly, and so. The new independent Albania that was created on the 28th of November 1912 was a very small territory between Durrës, Berat, and Vlora. So all this, I was mentioning the archives and the newspapers and stuff like that because you are students and you have a lot to do with archives and with doing research, But this is a very interesting stuff. It's a very interesting thing to do. You go to the archives and you research online the newspapers. It's fun. It's fun to do. All this. Another important information, a source of information was the books that I found about this period. There are many books in the world. They talk about the Balkan Wars, they talk about Albania, independence. But these books are spread around. You cannot find them in one place. Let's say it's not that you go to the National Library in Tirana and you go and ask for a book and they bring it to you. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that. But I'm lucky that my house in Washington, D.C., where I live, is very close from the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress is a huge library, and you can find them. You can find there any kind of books, And the beauty of it is that you can order the book online. You say, I want such and such books online. I want 5 books. And you go the next day, and the books are there on the table. And the other beauty of this is that you can take pictures of the books. Not like here. Here they don't allow you to take pictures for some reason. I don't know whether it's jealousy or whatever. Do you know that? No.
Yeah, we do.
So what I do, I have a camera. That is a very normal camera. It's not a special camera. You've seen that. A small camera. And they have a special room. You can take the book in that room, and you can take pictures of the pages, and you can store that in your computer, and it's readily available whenever you like to. You want. And what I do is I take pictures of the whole book, not some pages. Starting from the cover and until the end, back cover. And it takes like 15 minutes to take pictures of the whole book. And this is a wonderful experience for me. I have in my computer about 400 books about Albania, new and old, and any kind of books published in Albania, in Greece, or in any other country, in Italy. And so I put them in a hard drive, and I can just click, and the book is right in front of me, all the pictures that I've taken, and I go to a certain page. This is where Ismail Kemal said this is where the interview is, and everything. So this is how you do research these days. And I also, I think about the older historians. I mean, how can they, do extensive research on a subject when they don't have all the books that are available about that subject? You go to the library every day with a bag, and then order a book. They bring it to you. They may not bring it to you, and they don't let you take pictures of the book for some reason. And I have a horrible experience here. I came to the library one day, and I ordered Gazeta Kombi, which is a very old collection of newspapers, Gazeta Kombi. And I said, I want this and this and this page of this newspaper. Can I take pictures? They said, no. Well, how do I take this to America? And they said, well, we're going to make copies, photocopies, Xerox it. So they opened the big machine, take the whole collection and put it there, and the collection fell apart. All the newspapers fell apart. I said, this is terrible. I mean, you're ruining the collection. Instead, I could have taken pictures and pay you whatever you want. So I don't know why they're doing this, but anyway. So this were the sources where I was able to find the information that I put in this book. And although this book is not a strictly historical publication, this is some kind of biographic thing. And this kind of books you can find hundreds and thousands in the United States and in the West as well. Journalists who write about a person, a biography, or an event. We have, for example, Walter Isaacson, who used to be director of Voice of America, where I work. He has written about a dozen of biographies, very important people, and one of those is the biography of Albert Einstein. Now, he's a journalist, he's not a historian, but he was able to write about Albert Einstein. Or, for example, somebody called Bill O'Reilly, who is the most important journalist in the United States. And he wrote 2 important books. One is called The Killing of Lincoln, and the other Killing of Kennedy. And these books were inspiration for me. It served as a source of inspiration for me to write my own book, because these books were important to show how a journalist can write history, can write about history. When I come here, I listen to some historians who say, no, journalists cannot write books. No, you cannot write books. Only historians should write books. I do not agree with this. A historian can write a history book, and journalists have their own right to write. Especially in a democratic society, you're free to write, and the readers would judge your work, whether it's worth reading or not. So there should be a prohibition of what you should do, what you should write and what you shouldn't write. There shouldn't be such limitations, I think. So by the way, this, am I on time? Or
Yes.
are we?
Yes.
Okay, so by the way, this Bill O'Reilly, who is an important journalist, he wrote these two books, and I liked those books. And these were very good books, and there were some historians who confronted the facts that he used and the data that he used, and so the book was well written, well edited, and all that. Now, there are some critics who say, well, you're journalists, you appear a lot on TV, so it is not fair that because we see your head on TV every day, why should we buy your book? Because you are famous? So this was an argument that some people raised, and they do it here in Albania as well. I wrote Fight for Nica, for example, and I was suspicious that people would say, well, you are on Voice of America, we see you every day, or we listen to you, so we go there and buy your book. So you have this advantage of advertising your book, and other people don't have it. So this is an argument, it's a good point, I think, but ultimately it's the reader who will decide whether a book is good or bad, you know. But my point of view, and I strongly support that is that journalists are entitled and are entitled to write history, to write about history, and to write biographies and stuff like that. I plan to write more history in the future. I don't know what I'm going to write about now, but in the future, I'm sure that I'm going to write about some other historical figures or events. By the way, Albania is a fascinating country. When you live here, you think Albania's history is boring. You have these personalities, egos who fight against each other. You know, politicians fight against each other, and you say, "Oh, this is so boring." But when you go to the United States and think about Albanian history, which is only 100 years old, you find so many stories here, so many beautiful, fascinating stories here. I mean, how the Albanian state was created, how it was consolidated. We had a king, King Zog, and he was a very interesting king. And how much, you see how much controversy you have in Albania. Some historians, they praise the king. They say that King Zog consolidated the Albanian state. Some others say, no, he was bad, he killed so many people. And so you have this argument, and this makes history so beautiful. You know, writing about history makes it so beautiful. And of course, as Mr. Hasinia told me just a few minutes ago, that I mean, you should be balanced, impartial, and when you write your books, you know. You cannot have this nationalist passion, because I'm writing about Ismail Kemal, and what I write should be good about him. I mean, you should not write bad about this person because he's the founding father of Albania. No, I don't think so. I mean, you should write whatever you find in the archives, and you draw conclusions after you do the research, not before the research. So when I started writing this book, I didn't think that I'll find some stuff that portray Ismail Kemal as a good man, not as a bad man. But in my research, I found examples, for example, where Ismail Kemal took money from Greece. And some people say, oh, he's a traitor because he took money from Greece. In fact, he did take money from the Greek government, but conditions were different at that time. But anyway, I put it in my book. And so, in order to have the true story, you have to collect all the facts and present them in a balanced and especially in an honest way. A writer has to be an honest person and to write honestly about history and about his findings. That's all I had. Sorry, I was a little long.
No, very good. So we are open for questions.
Very simple question. Did you have any dilemma what language to write the book, Albanian or English?
My English is not so good in the first place. I thought of writing this in Albanian, and if there's some interest, I would give this to my daughter, whose English is excellent, and maybe she could, translate it into the English language. But I don't see any interest so far. I mean, how many Albanians do you have in the United States, for example, that would like to read the book in English? I'm not sure about that. What do you think?
Some international readers might have interest.
Some, yeah, that's true. But I'll think about it. But I don't have time to translate this myself. I mean, I could do some, but I don't have that luxury of time. I would give this to my daughter or to someone else. And also, don't forget that translating a book is an expensive thing. It costs a lot of money. You know, to pay an American translator to do this, it's very costly.
So all these interesting conclusions are from your opinion, from newspaper that you found on this website. So it's not just the historical, that fact that has been.
Right. I mean, the primary sources for me were the archives, where you get the bare facts without any embellishments, without any additions, without any. These are the reports, for example, that the councils, the Austria-Hungary councils in Albania, in Durrës and Vlora, sent to their foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs, Count Leopold Bertold in Vienna. So these are just facts. I mean, I don't see any reason why not. And also the newspapers, you have to be a little careful about the newspapers, because at that time, the Western media was not as impartial as it is now. So you have to find facts on both sides, from both sides. Thank you.
Through your research, did you find anything interesting, some that you did not know?
Right. Yeah. A lot of things. Yeah, a lot of stuff. For example, there is a famous meeting, a so-called meeting between Ismail Kemal and the Foreign Minister of Austria-Hungary, Leopold Bertold, Count Bertold. This meeting was very important because Bertold gave Ismail Kemal a ship to come to Albania, to go to Albania. And there's this information I only found in Ismail Kemal memoirs. He has a book, the Memoirs of Ismail Kemal. But as a journalist, I know that we shouldn't rely on memoirs. Memoirs are very misleading because people like to show off. They like to portray themselves as they did things that go beyond their capacity or anything like something like that. So you have to be very careful when you find things from it. So I was very suspicious. I thought, well, maybe Ismail Kemal lied about this. Maybe he didn't even meet with Bertold, because no newspaper has any information about that. The archives didn't say anything about that. And I specifically asked the people in the Foreign Ministry of Austria-Hungary who deal with the archives. I said, I want information about that specific meeting that happened between this and this date. And so this was during the journey when Ismail Kemal was coming to Durrës. This happened. According to Ismail Kemal, according to his memoirs. I needed an independent source, and I found it. Finally, I found that in the Austria-Hungary archive. I was so happy that day when I found it. It was a little information, just one phrase, that showed me that they really met. It didn't say what they discussed, but I could, imagine what it was about. But at least I found that information. And this archive, some of these documents have been translated into Albanian. and are stored in the Institute of History. And I requested a copy, an Albanian translation of that particular document. And I compared the German and the Albanian document. And exactly that phrase, when they mentioned that Ismail Kemal met with Bertolt, was not in the Albanian text. Either the translation was wrong, so the translator omitted that phrase, or he didn't understand the meaning. It's amazing sometimes, you know, you have to go to the source, you have to go to the original. It's very important. Yes, sir.
Did you find it difficult to be objective? Was in the past semi-fascinating story that probably mislead you?
Say it again, please.
Did you find it difficult to be objective?
Objective to do? Oh. This is a very good question. Yeah, this is very, very interesting question, because to be objective about writing a book on Ismail Kemal is very difficult. You have many people who would get angry if you say bad things about him. You know, it's very difficult. But I found that he was truly an intelligent person. He was a great diplomat. I mean, I didn't find anything bad about him, if we, if you want. But yes, it's very difficult to be objective. Very, very difficult, really. Luckily, I live in the United States. It's another culture. I'm not surrounded by people who push me to write good things about Ismail Kemal. So when I come to Albania, you know, I come with something that has been cooked in the United States, in a different culture. You know, I'm bombarded by the media, which is very objective, very unbiased, and this is a good thing. You know, that's the advantage of living in a Western country.
Congratulations for your book. I haven't read it. I will read it.
Thank you, sir.
Greatly. 2-3 observations, really, let's say, you know, for the sake of restituting what both newspapers of the time as well as archival work, you know, they are both primary sources in history. Second, with regards to archival sources extracted from particular archives, of course they contain facts, they may also contain opinions as well as, you know, certain interpretations. And we shouldn't actually, you know, we shouldn't overtrust, let's say, you know, these archival works, because even ambassadors or consuls or agents had a particular, let's say, you know, milieu from which they got information, and often, let's say, even this information was filtered through their own filters.
That's true.
So there is no 100% objectivity in historiography. We always, let's say, you know, take sides, but facts remain facts.
Right. So this is a challenge here. I mean, some archives are not readily accessible. For example, the archives of the Greek Foreign Ministry, it's terrible to access. It's so difficult. You have to ask in advance, and they ask you questions. Why do you want to write such a book? And then the book, I think the project must be approved by a commission. So basically, they discourage you to go there and do research.
It's true, but they have been published, Skulidas and...
Right. And so what I did, I interviewed, I found some books in Greek, actually, who were written by people who insist on this Vorio Epirus question. And I mean, maybe they're not trustworthy. The Albanians don't like these people, but I mean, this is some source. Also, I interviewed Professor Vasilis Kondis, who is a great scholar. He was in Selanik. I didn't know that he was alive. I was happy when I learned that he was there, and I gave him a call. So we had a long interview, a conversation, and he, you know, made clear his point of view. He said, "I don't like Ismail Kemal at all because he took money left and right." I said he did, but I mean, he did it for a reason. And so we had a debate, a conversation. And he's one of those few persons who has seen an agreement that Ismail Kemal has made with Theotokis, with the Prime Minister Theotokis, with the Greek Prime Minister in 1907, a very important agreement. Ismail Kemal was a private citizen at that time, and he made an agreement with the Prime Minister of Greece. about what the future boundary between Greece and Albania will look like. Very important agreement. But nobody has seen that. I said, how come the Greek government doesn't publish that agreement? He said, because the officials there believe that they shouldn't publish it. And it's amazing. I said, have you seen that agreement? Yes, I've seen that. And he described the agreement and so on. So I try to take advantage of every opportunity. But yes, what you say is right. I mean, you have to take the archives with some reserve and also confront the facts, you know, compare. For example, I never use one single source when I say something important. I use that source, but also compare it with what the newspapers of that time said about it. So, yes?
My question was about, you said you consulted the archives at the Austro-Hungarian state at the time. Did you consult any other archive within European state? For example, Italy, the nearest one?
Right, Italy is very important. Italian archives are very difficult to research, so I had some limited access to that, and I did that, but not to the extent that I did with the Austria-Hungary archive.
Any similarities between the archives?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, the facts about the independence of Albania are very straightforward. There are no, you know, strange things that you can find here and there. But I mean, for example, whatever the council reported from Durazzo and whatever Bertolt reported from Vienna, I think mostly was in line with what the Italians were saying. And there are also some Italian diplomatic archives. It's the so-called DDI, Documenti Diplomatici Italiani. This is, I found this on, in the Library of Congress, a very thick book with all these things. But I mean, there are a lot of things that I haven't had access to, and they're available somewhere in the Italian archives, but the Italian archives are a little difficult to research.
Excuse me, in what extent is it possible or feasible for a journalist to write a historical book? Because it's basically the work of a historian, a trained personality.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I gave two examples how a journalist can write books. And I learned from those examples. I bought those books and I read them during in the course of writing my own book. And I saw how a journalist should approach history, because this is a very important question. You know, and how do you approach it by being balanced but honest, treating the archives carefully. And all that. So, but it is possible, I think, because a historian describes history very not with any passion, dryly, strictly based on the facts. Not because I'm not based on the facts, but I also put elements that make it more accessible, more interesting. You know, a story more interesting. This is important for the readers to read a book.
I had a question, since you mentioned Bill O'Reilly, and I just want to just tap a little bit on the impartiality and the objectivity of our journalists, right? And maybe some of the audiences are familiar with O'Reilly's views. I was wondering whether you consider how his conservative views affect whatever he writes. I don't know if the audience knows.
Yeah, that's a good question, because it is very conservative. Yeah, I mean, what I learned from O'Reilly is the way of writing, of depicting history, how he approached the archives, how he put you know, fascinating elements and ignored some elements which are not interesting to the reader. But in other words, when you read O'Reilly's book, The Killing of Lincoln and The Killing of Kennedy, the conclusion is clear. I mean, you get a picture of how these American presidents were killed. And this is the most important thing. You get somehow, you know, you create a picture of that. When you read a history book, a thick history book, I mean, I don't think you get that picture because the journalist works a lot with the detail. For example, how Ismail Kemal's eyes were. This is important. People don't know in Albania that he had blue eyes, for example. A historian doesn't say that, right? I mean, we see from the pictures of Ismail Kemal, you don't see that he has blue eyes here, because all the pictures were black and white. Or that how his beard were, for example, was. I found in memoirs and other books that his beard was like salt and pepper, kind of beard. And the eyes were blue, and all kind of things. So this is the difference between what we do and what an historian does.
Right, I was much more
But I mean,
interested on the political side.
Yeah, the political side, I didn't.
Historical interpretation.
I didn't. I mean, consider that. I didn't.
While you were researching archive or something like that, did you notice that some country not be honest with our history or try to hide something or something like that?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, I think. No, I didn't necessarily find that. I didn't. Let's say when the Austria-Hungary Council in Durazzo, in Durrës, wrote about the Muslims, for example, he depicted them like a little backward. You know, the Muslims were backward, he said, in Albania, but this sort of colorations, this sort of nuances, I mean, you can readily understand. You can tell that he has a bias against the Muslims because the Austro-Hungary Council was a Catholic. So but this is a very good question. Yeah.
If you could choose only one significant personality from the Albanian history in these 100 years, what the personality would be? For example, Ismail Kemal stayed only for a few years in power, Ahmed Zogu 25 years, and Enver Hoxha was for 50 years approximately. What is your personal opinion about the most important personality of this 100 years?
I don't have an opinion about that, sorry. but I didn't do an extensive research of Albanian history in that sense. But what I found after Ismail Kemal, after studying Ismail Kemal, was that he was an extremely intelligent person, and the Albanians can be proud of Ismail Kemal. He was so different from other persons who, you know, clinched to power and wanted to stay in power at any cost. And he, when the International Control Commission said that you should resign, he said the next day, he said, yes, I will resign, no problem. And he left Albania. He was a little disappointed, but he did resign. Other people wouldn't do that, and we see examples.
We'll take two last questions, okay?
What is new, unknown to the reader in your book that the reader doesn't know yet? Could you give me a reason why to buy and read it?
Right. Well, I'm not recommending you to buy the book, but I think the main thing. I mean, there are little jewels, you know, in the book. You know, little things, new discoveries, facts that some of them I mentioned. But the main reason is that when you read this book, it's like a story. It's like a human story. You know, he started the journey on November 2nd. 1912, and ended it in November the 28th, 1912, where he proclaimed the independence of this new state of Albania. And so the story has a beginning and an end. It's not like different facts. Because many people today, what they do, they collect facts and documents. I found this, I found that, and they put together and do a book and sell it to you. You know. This is so easy to do, I think. I mean, I have so many documents that I found that are new to the reader, so many interviews. I could have put them together and sell it to you. But this is not like this. This is a story which has a beginning and an end. You read it like a story, like you're reading a novel, for example.
Why from Konica to Ismail Kemal? Is there any relation or it's just a choice?
Oh, these are men of great personalities. Two great men of Albania. Although they had two personalities, they clashed. I mean, if Konica said, for example, in 1908, he said, Ismail Kemal is such a great person that he should be our foreign minister when the Albanian state is created. In 1919, when Ismail Kemal died, Konica said things about him that is shameful to even read. It's so amazing. I mean, he blamed Ismail Kemal for many things. I don't know if it's true or not, but I found an article written by Konica, this other great man, where he, he blasted Ismail Kemal, basically, made him look stupid and whatever. But these are, about the Albanian egos. These are people with great egos. I mean, who will be first and who will be second? This is amazing. But I like this when personalities have strong egos and they have strong opinions and characters. I like to depict them. That's why.
Well, in some way, it was following up the question that was the last one. You have made an historical book, but dealing so much with Ismail Kemal, what kind of leader would you define him? What are the most prominent characteristics? And
I think he was a visionary, first of all, and he predicted the birth of the Albanian state, an independent state, in 1907, when he had that agreement with Greece, for example. He said the Greeks should help us when the Turkey will withdraw from the Balkans. There's going to be a vacuum, and we need to have an independent state. So that was 4 years before the independence was proclaimed. And this shows the vision that he had. Also, when he left Istanbul on November 2nd to come to Albania, he knew that he had a goal in front of him and how he's going to achieve this goal. And he did that. In 26 days, he comes to Albania and creates a national government, which the others said is impossible. The Albanians cannot come together and create it. So this was a visionary, I would say.
But he left the government a little bit easily.
I mean, that's true. He was not a very good politician on the other side, on the other hand. But this is not him to blame. I think there was these egos that were clashing with each other. And also Esat Pash Toptani, who was another leader, he tried to obstruct his government because of what we know about Albanian history. People want to, take advantage of the situation and become leaders themselves.
I know that there are 100 questions remaining, but you will have a chance to meet Ilir personally.
But it's
after that.
amazing that they have so many questions. I mean, these are so smart.
We are one of we are the best university.
I believe so. I believe so.
I hope we'll have you in the future book, coming back here and having thousands of questions.
How about next year?
Okay.